Imagine for a moment that a friend tells you they have to appear in court. What sort of feelings does this bring up for you? They are probably not positive. If you have to appear in court, you might be a party to a case, a witness in a trial, or supporting a friend or family member who is facing charges. These experiences may not be easy or fun, but we hope that everyone who enters the courtroom is treated fairly, and that those who work in the courthouse fulfill their duties appropriately and in accordance with their role and responsibilities. Today, we will talk about the ways in which citizens interact with the courts outside of being a party to a case, as participants in the work of the courts, and as participants in a democratic society. We don't often have the chance to stop and think about what it means to be citizens. One way to view our role as citizens is through the lens of a new immigrant to our country. Because they are required to pass a citizenship test, immigrants who become U.S. citizens are often among the most educated and optimistic about how our government works and what we as citizens can do to ensure the continued functioning of our democracy. The U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Service provides an overview of the rights and responsibilities that come with being an American citizen. Our rights include the freedom to express ourselves, worship as we wish, receive a prompt, fair trial by jury, vote in elections, apply for federal employment, run for elected office, and pursue life, liberty, and happiness. We also have the responsibility to support and defend the Constitution, stay informed of the issues affecting our community, participate in the democratic process, respect and obey the law, respect the rights and opinions of others, participate in our communities, pay our taxes, serve on a jury when called, and defend the country if the need should arise. You may have noticed that jury service appears on both the rights and responsibilities lists. Jury service is fundamental to the functioning of our courts and perhaps the most direct way we as citizens engage in the judicial process. A recent poll found that 1 in 10 Americans have served on a jury, and that those who had served were generally more likely to trust the judicial system. There are two types of juries in our country. We are generally most familiar with the work of jurors who serve on a petite jury, the trial jury that serves as the fact finder in a case and decides on the verdict. If you are summoned for jury duty, you are most likely going to serve on a petite jury. You'll be part of a jury pool called the venire, from which a judge can select jurors for a particular case. During what's called the voir dire process, attorneys can ask questions of the pool and move to eliminate a certain number of people they think might be biased based on their answers, but they cannot remove jurors because of their identity. Petite jurors serve for the duration of the case, hear and review evidence, and render a verdict. The second type of jury is the grand jury, which meets as needed over several months or a year to review evidence from the prosecutor and determine whether that evidence is sufficient to bring criminal charges. In some cases, grand jurors may interview witnesses and even inspect the scene of a crime, as this grand jury did in a case involving a Boston hotel fire in 1913. The use of grand juries is required in all federal felony cases and in many state criminal cases. This means that before anyone can be charged with a federal crime, a grand jury, usually made up of 16 to 23 regular citizens, must find that the evidence shows probable cause of a crime. In order to convict a defendant during a trial, petite jury members must find that the evidence shows guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. The juror's role in our court system is fundamental to the founders' vision for our courts and the checks and balances system of our government. The founders believed that assigning citizens the important functions of fact-finding and deciding the verdict would help shield trials from political influence, ensure an impartial review of evidence, and give people a direct opportunity to uphold community standards. Today, jury service is one of the best opportunities you may ever have to see our judicial system at work and to do your civic duty. In addition to jury service, voting is another core right and responsibility of citizenship that directly affects our judicial system. Although federal judges are not elected, we can vote for the president and senators who nominate and confirm judges to the bench, and for members of Congress who have the power to pass laws and draft constitutional amendments that directly affect the power and structure of the federal court system. In many states, voters also directly elect judges and state Supreme Court justices. State judges have a tremendous impact in local communities and in the development of law. In fact, 90 to 95% of court cases in our country are heard in state courts. State courts are also the place where many federal judicial nominees get their start. If you live in a state where judges are elected, please take advantage of this opportunity to make your voice heard. To help you make informed choices when voting for a judge, the National Association for Women Judges suggests that you look for these traits in candidates. Integrity. A judge should be honest, impartial, and committed to the rule of law. Professional competence. A judge should have a keen intellect, extensive legal knowledge, and strong writing skills. Judicial temperament. A judge must be neutral, decisive, respectful, and composed. Experience. A judge should have a strong record of professional excellence in the law. Service. A judge should be committed to public service and the administration of justice. There are several ways to find out whether a judicial candidate has these qualities. Review websites and voter guides provided by nonpartisan groups such as the League of Women Voters. Check your local bar association to see if it offers ratings on the candidates or can guide you to other information, such as judicial performance evaluations. State bar organizations provide disciplinary records on lawyers, and state judicial councils provide records on judges. Attend voter information sessions and review newspaper endorsements. Discuss your findings with people whose opinion you value. See if they have other information or experiences you should consider. Consider who is paying for any advertising you see about a judicial election. Voicing your opinions as a participant in our democracy also is both a right and a responsibility of citizenship. The founders considered free speech and expression as essential to our democracy. So much so that they protected the freedom of speech and our right to peaceably assemble for redress of grievances in the First Amendment of the Constitution. Free speech has been curtailed at various points in our history. But over the last century, the Supreme Court has adopted robust protections for free speech, especially political speech, because political debate and discourse are so critical to a healthy democracy. The First Amendment protects our rights to criticize the work of the courts, to speak out when we think a decision is wrong, and to voice our concerns and opposition to public and elected officials. How do we voice concerns? One way is to talk to our elected representatives about judicial nominations, policy issues affecting the courts, and how they plan to vote on legislation we care about. And when courts make decisions we don't like, we can ask our legislators to change the laws. The executive and legislative branches also have significant power over the structure of our courts, including the Supreme Court. Throughout our country's history, Congress and the President have imposed many changes on the courts, and several reforms are percolating today. There is debate about whether the political branches have the authority to enact some of these reforms, and the Supreme Court would have to consider the constitutionality of some of these proposals. For instance, some people think any change to life tenure would require a constitutional amendment. In 2024, a senator introduced a bill that would increase the size of the Supreme Court from 9 justices to 15, make it harder for justices to overturn laws, require justices to undergo financial audits, and remove roadblocks for high court nominations. If any of these proposals sound good or bad to you, then you could write to your congressional representatives to voice your opinion and consider their position on such reforms when you vote. Many of the reforms that are so hotly debated at the federal level are old hat in the state courts. State courts are subject to far more change and reform than federal courts, simply because it is easier to pass new laws in the states. This also means the state courts tend to be incubators of sorts. They are trying out new things all the time, and some of them wind up influencing other states and federal courts. In 2024 alone, for example, there were well over 300 proposed bills relating to the courts under consideration in state legislatures, as well as a number of ballot initiatives in which citizens voted on changes to the judicial system, such as creating or eliminating mandatory term or age limits for judges and changing judicial discipline processes. Thomas Jefferson once said, "A well-informed citizenry is the best defense against tyranny." Being informed citizens also is another important way we fulfill our civic duties. When we are responsible consumers of information about our courts, we are better prepared to engage as jurors, as voters, and as defenders of the rule of law. But being a responsible consumer of information today is hard. Former Vice President Al Gore once said, "The well-informed citizenry is in danger of becoming the well-amused audience." Many people don't read newspapers or even watch television news anymore. If they read news, they might only look at specific websites or newsletters that provide a narrow view on current events. Or they may only read news on social media, which is full of disinformation and misinformation. Getting news about the courts is particularly tricky. Traditional media covers big cases and controversies, but generally ignores the day-to-day work of our courts, which can lead to a distorted view on how well the system works. How can we become well-informed citizens? A key first step is knowing the role of disinformation and misinformation in today's national discourse. Disinformation is information that is intended to distort the truth. Misinformation is false information that someone believes is true. Both present significant threats to our democracy. National security experts report that foreign governments are using social media to generate distrust for our public institutions, including the judiciary. These campaigns are often shared and reshared by regular people who believe what they're seeing. Disinformation about the judicial system tends to center on themes that resonate with people who are already distrustful of government. These campaigns might begin with a kernel of truth, like a real case or a sentiment that many people share, but then they distort the facts to fuel anger and polarization on both sides. Two important steps you can take to counter these trends are to protect yourself against disinformation and misinformation, and to become a savvy consumer of news about our courts. Here are a few ways to protect yourself against disinformation. Follow a diverse group of people and perspectives. Look for credible sources that present perspectives that might be counter to your own views. You can find resources online to help you evaluate the political bias of major news outlets. Be skeptical. To encourage clicks and generate ad revenue, many online outlets resort to misleading or sensationalized headlines. Remember that not everything you read is accurate, and some websites specialize in false news. Fact check before you share. Double-check stories against other sources, including traditional media, educational organizations, or reputable fact-checking websites like factcheck.org, snopes.com, and politifact.org. Stand up against false information. If you see that someone has posted a story that is false, say something. Whenever possible, link to a fact checker or verifiable data that counters the false claim. Distinguish between opinion and false information. People are entitled to their opinions. Remember, a responsibility of citizenship is to respect others' opinions. But one person's opinion or experience doesn't necessarily equal a trend or broad truth. That's why countering false narratives with verifiable data is important. Now that you know more about our courts and the role of judges, you can also try to dig beneath the headlines in the news you see. Here are a few specific steps you can take. Go to the source. Most significant rulings are published on court websites and in databases you can access through your library. Look for legal media coverage when possible. Media outlets that specifically cover legal news, such as scotusblog.com and law.com, provide more detail and context than you can find in traditional media. Try to take politics out of the story. Media coverage of cases often mentions which president or governor appointed a judge. This suggests that the judge is a political actor. Try to consider whether you would feel differently about the case if you didn't know who appointed the judge, or the political parties of the defendant or claimant. Remember that ethics codes often prevent judges from speaking out. Judges can't talk about cases that are or may come before them. Lawyers, pundits, and advocates often provide explanations to reporters, but they may have their own biases. Look for deeper context. Judges are constrained in their decision-making by law, rules, ethics, norms, precedent, and more. A sentence might seem too light or too heavy until you learn more about the defendant's history and circumstances and the laws, precedents, and guidelines relating to the case. Even then, we can disagree with the court's decision without making it personal against a judge. People of good faith disagree, often strongly, about how our government should work, what the law is and should be, the structure of our courts, and how to balance judicial independence and accountability. But the rule of law, and all that our courts do to uphold it, is the foundation of our way of life, our economy, our ability to work, to go to school, to travel, to worship, or not to worship, to voice our opinions, and elect our leaders. And the rule of law doesn't work without us. Justice Louis Brandeis said, "The most important political office is that of the private citizen." The way things are isn't the way they've always been or always will be. Remember, the source of our government's authority is the Constitution, and the source of the Constitution's authority is we, the people. It's our job to learn about how our government works and to engage in our democratic system, to support it, to improve it, and to protect it. Our rights as citizens are intertwined with our responsibilities. We have to stay informed, vote, and engage in order to make sure we keep those rights. Thank you for participating in this course and taking that first important step toward becoming better informed about our courts and the work of our judiciary.